What's going on, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm gonna review the fourth album by Halestorm, led by the front woman Lizzie Hale. And basically, this project follows like a cover project of EP or an EP of covers that they dropped in 2017. And their album before this project was called Into the Wildlife, which had a number of number ones on this in terms of the singles and some just chock full of pretty good hits on there. But this album, they took their time with it, following it up 3 years later, and they discarded a few songs and stuff like that. But this is a different direction than what Into the Wildlife was, where it seemed like Into the Wildlife was more hard rock and more in the rock direction. This kind of tests out metal. I'm not sure if like their earlier albums were really metal, but this has very faint traces of alternative metal, some glam metal, pop metal, and even a touch of hard rock in there. So to me, it's just basically like kind of like an edgy, kind of almost Evanescence type feel mixed with some Corn, but then add in some Pantera, and then I would probably say like just another typical hard rock band that you could think that would be at like some sort of saloon or bar or karaoke bar or pub or something like that. And that's probably what you would have for this. I mean, Lizzie Hale is a pretty good front woman. I do like her distinct voice and the way that she kind of shrieks and has good choruses and yells on these sorts of choruses really makes for a good shift in terms of being distinct. Not quite as collected as Amy Lee from Evanescence, but I kind of like her kind of more loose and just kind of spunky and kind of ferocious kind of attitude. She's a little bit more forward on this project than I would say that Amy Lee is. That's something to kind of notice. But yeah, so it's kind of a shame that this project, I mean, it did well for what it was back in 2018. Originally, I was going to review this album. It was kind of one I had in debate back in 2019, 3.5 years ago, but I just never got around to it. But it was always one I kind of had on the back burner. So this project has been something I've wanted to review for at least the past 4 years. And even when I was gone from Acid Roots in 2018, I had this project in mind somewhat. So this is just something that I finally got around to wanting to do and such. But yeah, so rock was kind of in a different place at the time. I mean, Jonathan Davis was making his solo record throughout the summer of 2018. And then you also had like the folks that did Zombie. I forget who did that. It was like Bad Wolves or something like that. So there was a number of things I do remember from 2018, but this is definitely the singles. To talk about the singles now, one of the singles I remember was Uncomfortable, and this is kind of a head-banging song. I mean, the thing I noticed about this project is the fact that these songs, in terms of the genre that they do, they come in twos, where Uncomfortable has like another song that's very similar to it, but to me, it basically reminded me of like a bar song, something that you would hear at like a night venue where there's loud music blaring. But the thing about this album, not the whole album is just like a night at the bar or a night at like a pub or something like that, or a night at like some venue where you're going to perform or hear music and stuff. So I would have to say they do it, but they just very faintly touch upon it where that's not the wholesome theme about it. But for what it is, I like the energy of Uncomfortable. Lizzie Hale really nails the hook. She has a lot of high energy in there and just kind of goes along with it rather well. There's really no single like it on this project. There is another song, but it's not in terms of the singles that you're going to hear on the radio. Now, I like the mood and the vibe of the second single, Black Vultures. This is alternative metal, and it's kind of strange to hear them try that genre out just because alternative metal, kind of pseudo post grunge in the late 2010s is particularly awkward just because, we're since removed from bands like Stained and Puddle of Mud and Creed and some of those type folks, but it just felt interesting to kind of get it. I really liked Lizzie Hale's hook on here. This is another one that kind of had like a sense of rebellion to it and just kind of a more fuck you right back kind of attitude, which I appreciated. And it was just interesting just from like an angle as far as talking about folks that want to see you fail. It's kind of, I mean, it's interesting to hear rock music talk about haters just because it's not something that oftenly happens. She kind of refers to them as scavengers or black vultures, but it's just interesting to kind of see that context. It's a nice alternative metal there. Do Not Disturb is kind of like a saucy, kind of flirty number, and it kind of works pretty well just because it's not really so much rock or metal as much as it is just kind of the guitar licks in the song are really light, and they just kind of let the lyrics kind of sink in and do their work. This kind of as like a sultry kind of number to kind of get the energy pumped and get things kinetic and that type stuff. So it's just interesting to kind of get that. And like I said, this is kind of more, it's, it works. So that I would have to say I do appreciate the energy of the song. And it's kind of interesting because this was the second highest, or this was one of the top two singles from this project. So it worked pretty damn well. And I would have to say, I still would like another single with the energy of Uncomfortable, but this is a good follow up in terms of what it created. Just the fact that most rock songs are not normally that forward, especially from a female. So this is kind of the concept of it. But Vicious, this kind of reminded me of a Korn record. This pays homage, I think, in a lot of ways to kind of the more spooky and kind of autumn themed and October themed kind of alternative metal that used to be from back in the day. It felt really strange to hear this way out, especially when it charted way out in like the spring of 2019 and late 2018 and such. Really good. I liked it. I kind of felt like the energy is just easy to get into. Nice backyard kind of drink a beer kind of music and just let the festivities kind of happen. This perfect autumn music, perfect kind of ghoulish and kind of creepy kind of vibe. I was surprised that Halestorm had this in them. I wasn't expecting it. I thought that this was going to be a whole album worth of Uncomfortable and maybe Black Vultures type songs, but it has some good angles that it proves on this project. So yeah, there's 12 songs on here, and like I said, the songs kind of come in sets of two. So you're basically getting about a handful of different types. You get at least one other type song for every song that you want. So like there are kind of like ballads on here, kind of more stretching, kind of post grunge kind of ballads in a sense with The Silence and then Heart of Novocaine. And then there's kind of some similar kind of spooky alternative metal and Korn type music with Vicious and White Dress. Then there's kind of the more romantic and kind of more sultry kind of music with Conflicted and Do Not Disturb. And then you get some kind of bar music and kind of more outgoing night venue weekend type stuff with Buzz and Uncomfortable. That's four different types of music on here. There are some other ones like I feel like Skulls was attempting to be pop metal, and I don't really know how I feel about that particular genre. Black Vultures doesn't really have a song like it. It's really the lone alternative metal song. And then like Killing Ourselves to Live, and there was one other one. Oh yeah, Painkiller. So Killing Ourselves to Live, basically, that one was just kind of a standard rock song. But I couldn't really figure out where that one kind of went. I guess that was more backyard music. So Painkiller was backyard music. So I guess there really was two types of just about everything except for two. So Painkiller and Killing Ourselves to Live are similar, but I preferred Painkiller to Killing Ourselves to Live just because I wasn't too big a fan of the topic. It was kind of more of like a progressive kind of metal song, which but I did like Painkiller. So I'll go ahead and list some of these songs now that I recommend. So the 8 songs out of 12 I recommend would be Do Not Disturb, Conflicted, Uncomfortable, Vicious, Black Vultures, White Dress, Buzz, and Painkiller. So basically just in the context of what I said, I feel like if you're looking for a night out and some weekend fun, Buzz and Uncomfortable are the way to go. Conflicted and Do Not Disturb are more flirty. Vicious and White Dress are kind of similar to Korn, kind of in a spooky sense. And then Painkiller and Black Vultures are kind of the odd ones out. But that's just kind of the concept. There's at least one type. There's one additional type of every type song that you're going to find on here just in terms of that. I felt like they really nailed these genres. That's something I appreciate about Halestorm is the angles that they attempted to do, they pulled off quite well. With the exception of Skulls, what that was trying to do, I feel like every other, except with the exception of Skulls and then the power ballads that they attempted to do, every other type genre that they try in terms of like the amalgamation of what they did works quite well. And I was just impressed with how well this was executed and just the energy behind it. Lzzy Hale is very energetic and she's kind of a more hot personality type, feisty, and kind of has like a lot of energy and red hot kind of spunk to her and that type of stuff. So she has a kinetic character and she's pretty good at these hooks also. Most of them are going to have like a pretty daring good time just in the sense of not even when it's kind of more lambent, it still kind of gives off like a certain edge to it that's just appreciated. So I do appreciate that. I did find myself wanting more songs like Uncomfortable and Buzz, just because for going out, I mean, it just feels kind of relatively tame in the sense of being a metal record, which is supposed to be high energy. It is high energy, but it's just converted to differential topics that are not just necessarily for the weekend. So you have to understand that, like, some of these are for your girlfriend. Some of these are for just a long car drive where you're kind of feeling more moody and that type stuff. Some of these are more for um, like just kind of more kind of just generally moody session in terms of like the alternative metal that I described with Korn. So it's just different types of moods that it just doesn't. I mean, if you're looking for one type and you want them to stick with it, you're just getting a variety of kind of things. So it's kind of like a chameleon of a record in a lot of ways, just because I would have to say that's what winds up happening. But I'm not going to complain too much just because I look at the concept. The fact that they pulled it off and maintain the interestingness is enough judgment to be able to say that it's still worth picking up, but you just may be hungry if you find a song you like and want more. So this is kind of something to know. But I'm going to give this record an 8 out of 10. Me liking 8 out of 12, that's 2/3. You would think I would give it a 6, but four songs, only 4 songs out of 12 I didn't like is pretty damn good. I would almost give it a 9. I'm going to give it an 8. And the social score, because I liked all 4 of the singles, I'm going to give it an 8.5. I just would say maybe one more single. I'm not really, I don't know if I feel like saying that, but I just kind of feel like the different energy of all these it kind of leads me to think that some folks may really like one single, but then not like the other ones and kind of be divided on it. It doesn't have 2 of any type for each of the singles. They all cover a different angle. So it's just kind of, depending upon who you're hanging out with and the assortments of what you do, it might kind of have some trickiness. But it's just kind of, I mean, it is varietized, so you can't fault them for having variety. But it's just kind of, if you say, hey, I really like this song, give me another one, it's like, well, that's kind of difficult to do. But yeah, so Halestorm dropped an album. They actually haven't dropped an album since 2018, but they dropped an album in 2022, just back in May. So they took 4 years off, but I'm glad they're back. I am eventually going to review more of these guys. I wanted to, you know, get this stuff started, kind of test the waters here and see what's up with it. But I just would kind of have to say I'm interested based upon what I've seen with it, and I would have to say it's worth taking a further look in the future.